Welcome. Make sure that you click and subscribe as we discuss the latest sacking in the Premier League. Vamos. Well, Thomas Tuchel is out of Chelsea. Unbelievable stuff after losing in the opening game of the Champions League. Tuchel's 100th and final match in charge of the Blues was, of course, yesterday. And Todd Boehly said, enough. That is it. And the German manager is out. So now the questions are, why did it happen? Who is it next for Chelsea, and what can be of their season, especially after spending so much money? We got James Benge, Jonathan Johnson in the house. Qué Golazo, a live episode. So send in your questions and your comments, Chelsea fans. This is a safe space. We promise. Qué Golazo begins right now. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Qué Golazo. Thank you so much for being part of the family. Qué Golazo Pod on Twitter, youtube.com/Qué Golazo. We have passed 22,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for the love and support. This is an emergency show. It won't be a long one, but it's an important one because Thomas Tuchel is out of Chelsea. After completing his 100th match, he has been fired by Todd Boehly and co. after losing 1-0 to Dynamo Zagreb. But I think the execs and the statement itself can really say that it was much more than that. They spent more than £250 million on 9 players and still not good enough. Thomas Tuchel is out. James Benge, immediate reactions from you, please.
Yeah, well, you said this is a safe space. It's not a safe space if you're Todd Boehly. Todd Boehly, if you're watching this, we need to have a word. Look, I mean, I was writing a piece yesterday off the back of the dreadful performance against Dinamo Zagreb, and I thought, at the end I was kind of going, well, no, but they would be mad to sack him off. I said, this is troubling, and that he needs to fix this. And Tuchel himself said he didn't know what the problem was, and all those things are troubling. But then you kind of look back and you say, he made an immediate impact when he took over, leading them to the Champions League. First half of last season, they looked very, very strong. And people seem to forget that then he had to steward Chelsea through some pretty unprecedented circumstances. So perhaps it was no wonder the form dropped off a little bit. And then, Chelsea, Todd Boehly clearly decided this is a man I want to entrust with major responsibility. Tuchel had a say in pretty much every transfer from what I was told. And of course, on the final day of the transfer window, they brought him one of his favourite players he's ever worked with, in Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. And last month they were talking about extending his contract. That's a matter of record. Thomas Tuchel said that. And now they've sacked him. It is baffling. Or it only makes sense in the old world of Chelsea. It is a really bad piece of club management. And I know we're going to come to talk about the contenders soon after, but if I were Graham Potter, I would need some convincing that Todd Boehly and whoever else is around him actually have a clue what they're doing, because the first few months suggest they're flying blind here.
Yeah, absolutely. I can only echo James's sentiments. It kind of feels like, Chelsea are doing all of this on the fly. Obviously, Boehly is somebody who's new to the game and is discovering what it's like to be in charge of a football club. Yes, he has sporting experience, but, from a world which works completely differently, in this kind of respect, to the Premier League and footballing world. Is it a surprise for me that things have ended badly between Tuchel and Chelsea? No. I think I said at the beginning that ultimately, however positive the early days might be between Tuchel and Chelsea, something would happen eventually. Tuchel always finds a way to fall out with his higher-ups. The surprise is that he managed to sort of outlast, the Abramovich era, got a fresh start with Boehly coming in. And then, suddenly, Boehly decides a couple of games into the season, having just dropped so much money into the transfer window, that it's time for a change. To me, it feels like all the right things were said, when Boehly and the new group came in, but actually, sort of the intention, perhaps behind the scenes was to move Tuchel on at some point when there was an opportunity, to sort of stamp their authority on it and make a hire of their own. I mean, I've seen a lot of people saying on social media this morning, that coaches or, sort of the tactician of an outfit like this in Boehly's experience is not somebody who's often highly thought of. And it just seems like, this as well as a number of the transfer decisions that were made this summer have been very knee-jerk. It doesn't seem like there's been much, forward planning at all. And fine, if this ultimately is the direction that Chelsea want to go in, then, we'll see, what comes next. But if it's only to change direction again, I don't know, before Christmas, sometime just afterwards, then it's an absolute nonsense. I think Tuchel, he's the right guy to have in a very difficult spot. And now it feels like whoever is coming in is going to be coming into an extremely high pressure position. And perhaps that is not what either Graham Potter nor Maurizio Pochettino, having just come out of the PSG frying pan, would want from their next posting.
All right, we're going to talk about the prospective candidates. We mentioned Graham Potter, of course, Pochettino, Zidane, though I doubt that one is even more realistic than the other two. We'll talk about them in a second, but let me just read a little bit from that statement from Chelsea bench, and then you chime in, and JJ, you as well. I just wanted to, because both your points are about a little bit of a, mismanagement sort of objective here by Boehly acting so rapidly on firing him, not too much of a shock, in regards to some of the results that have come the way, not just the Champions League, of course, losing in the same manner at Leeds United, whatever, but it's only September. So it's kind of crazy that it happens this early. Some of the statement read, as the new ownership group reaches 100 days since taking over the club, and as it continues its hard work to take the club forward, the new owners believe it is the right time to make this transition. Chelsea's coaching staff will take charge of the team for training and the preparation for our upcoming matches as the club moves swiftly to appoint a new head coach. Though, James Benge, you aptly reported that it's not just Tuchel that is leaving, but it's also a lot of his staff. So they're a little bit thin in this London derby this weekend.
Yes, very, very thin. Although I think it gives you a sense of sort of how chaotic and how, as much as Chelsea might tell you otherwise, how this has kind of come out of the blue. That when I was speaking to people who would know this morning, they didn't know if Jolt Low, Arne Mikkels, and the other guy whose name is escaping me that came with Tuchel would definitely be leaving with Tuchel, because this has all come together a little bit on the fly. I mean, maybe as well, if we kind of look at that, that's what they've said in public, what they're saying in private, and you'll see sort of dozens of pieces flying around over the next few days, next few hours, and next few days, if you haven't already, about why Chelsea made this decision. And just to kind of give you a reporter's perspective, JJ, I know you'll have done the same on many, many occasions with PSG. But, when the clubs you're covering, it's a good time to get for club insiders and people to get some stuff off their chest, to bring some stuff out of the woodwork these hours after a manager's sacked. We hear a lot of complaints about how Boehly and Echegaray was struggling to work with Tuchel, that he wasn't always that receptive, that he changed his mind a lot.
I heard the Ronaldo thing was interesting, right? Boehly really wanted Ronaldo, apparently, and Tuchel was like, no. And Boehly was like, what? Why? He's amazing. And obviously not understanding Tuchel's tactical schemes. And obviously to the point where, I'm with Tuchel. Ronaldo's not a Chelsea player, but to that point, right? They just didn't agree.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there are players as well that are frustrated with their current role. Well, there always are at Chelsea. You don't have to be a genius to work out who they are. And the likes of Hakim Ziyech and Christian Pulisic were really disappointed not to get moves away. But look, part of this is just how a club works. And, Chelsea are talking about doubts that go back to the summer. Well, in that case, why did you just sign Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang? I mean, bringing up Ronaldo again, I think Aubameyang is a better player with a more long-term... Well, it's debatable whether Aubameyang's a better player with a more long-term future. But what's certainly true is that, if you're already doubting that Thomas Tuchel is the man for you, what you don't do on deadline day is give a 2-year contract to a 33-year-old who struggled in the Premier League last time around. And he's clearly your manager signing. And I think that's really what it comes down to. We're going to hear a lot over the next few days about why that Boehly and the executives felt they had to act. But I think what we're not going to hear, and what I would want answers from if I'm a Chelsea fan, is why they felt the need to act now, but, didn't kind of do anything about their reservations throughout the last few months, why they weren't putting in place people to manage Tuchel beyond themselves. That is, that's the real question. And although I think Tuchel has made it harder for himself over these last few months, he's difficult, going back to what JJ's saying, he could be a bit difficult in press conferences. I remember when he was sort of very negative towards what Leeds did when they thrashed them 3-0. But you should be able to manage that. And I think the person that's come out of this with all sorts of question marks, with all sorts of criticism for them, is the owner, not the manager.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I think as well, it is... I think it was taken for granted what Thomas Tuchel did, how he kept Chelsea rolling, through a very difficult time when the takeover was being mooted. I think there was an expectation on the incoming owner's side, that Tuchel would just be able to keep the ship on a steady course. And on sort of the outgoing owner's side, it was like, well, we're lucky to have this guy in charge, because at the end of the day, Chelsea was still on the high at that point after, winning the Champions League, performing, at a reasonably good level in the Premier League as well. And then obviously that dropped off. I think as well, perhaps, maybe there was a bit too much politeness, at the beginning of the Boehly era. Perhaps they felt obliged to maybe keep Tuchel on. And, really, if you have that sort of half-hearted feeling, towards somebody in a position as important as, the managerial role, then perhaps there should have been a review much, much earlier in the process. And that should have been one of the decisions made before, embarking on this massive, spending spree. Because,
JJ,
you look at...
interrupt you quickly, and then you can, just to that point that you just said, I feel like also, Todd Boehly entered a very surreal, time for Chelsea, right? Obviously, Abramovich leaving and Tuchel having to act as a communications officer as well at the time. There was a lot of disarray, and Todd Boehly came in, and I feel like, and I just know this from his sort of MLB persona, he wanted to almost probably symbolically wanted to see himself as a hero of Chelsea. I'm going to come in and save this club and do so many things. And I feel that now this is part of that persona. It's like, all right, it's not good enough. I promise we'll do change, and it's not good enough. And I feel the impatience, JJ, has kind of created this environment that really just obviously 100 days in, they keep saying 100 days in. It's kind of like, look, this is a mark. This is a state. This is a date. We need to now move on. Do you think that's part of it as well? The fact that Boehly has come in and he is pressuring himself to make massive changes for this club.
Yeah, I mean, what happens after the next 100 days if the new manager doesn't have them top of the league, the Champions League group?
Exactly right. JJ, very quickly though, because this is not going to be a long episode. So just very quickly, JJ, thoughts on what Tuchel does next? A return to the Bundesliga, perhaps? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting to see where Tuchel lands next. I mean, obviously his stock is still high in the Premier League. I'm sure that there would be other clubs, who will be looking for new managers in the next couple of months who would do worse than consider Tuchel for that role. Also, at the same time, there has historically been interest from Bayern. We've discussed over a couple of recent podcasts. I know Ian Paul Joy is a big believer that Nagelsmann could be on the hot seat there. So perhaps, if he's on the move in the next couple of months, Tuchel does have a landing spot in Germany. It sounds like no sooner had the RB Leipzig one opened up, it's closed again with Marco Rose, who's a good fit for the Red Bull model with experience of having worked with them in Salzburg, is going to be taking that job. So there's no immediate spot for Tuchel in Germany. But I think there will be a lot of clubs, looking in the Premier League who, could feel that Tuchel might be persuaded to take on the challenge to work with them. Villa, of course, could be one of them if Steven Gerrard ends up being on the wrong side of the managerial axe this weekend.
Tommy Tuchel's Claret and Blue Army. I love it. Hey, listen, James Benge, I was going to ask you about the replacements, and I want you to chime in after that. Graham Potter obviously being a massive candidate, already permission from Brighton to talk to him, etc. But this is a USMNT-centric show, of course, American-based. A lot of free Pulisic emojis going on right now. What does this mean for Christian Pulisic, James Benge, do you think?
Well, not that much. The reason he's not playing is because he's not in the. He said that he's not playing in his favoured role is because he's not in the 3 best forwards at Chelsea,
right?
And he wouldn't be in the 4 either. Maybe he'd be in the 5. I hate to break it to you, our American audience. It's not good news. It's not bad news. It's neutral news. He's still a squad player.
It's no news, right? Okay, so let's get into the replacements then. Let's talk about the major one. Graham Potter done tremendous things with Brighton and Hove Albion. Just a great story, an antithesis to all the sports washing and money and all that stuff. I don't want this to happen. Let me just say straight away. All right.
I know why you don't, and I know why JJ doesn't.
What do you mean, Solihull born Villa fan, life
Villa fan? So, I mean, for our
How
viewers,
realistic is it, James Benge, for this to happen?
eminently. So, as you just said there, from what I'm told, he has been given permission. Now, we should say he's been given permission because Chelsea are willing to pay his release clause, which is being reported. I don't know for certain, but it's being reported it's around 16 million. That's a bargain. So in effect, it's all a little bit out of kilter, but Chelsea have said we'd pay his release clause. Brighton have said, okay, well, you may as well talk to him rather than, how else could you do it? So he's obviously now, I believe the reports are he's traveling up to London. Some debate as to whether he's flying or getting the train. Train service isn't great. He seems very much top of the list. From what I was told, expect them to at least kind of touch base with Mauricio Pochettino. He would be the other candidate, but like the mood music coming out of Chelsea is they do want someone a bit more long term. They want someone that they can build around. They want someone fresh. And so, yeah, he ticks pretty much every box, doesn't he? He plays great football. He uses a very similar system to
English,
Tuchel,
which is nice, right, for a Chelsea.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Frank Lampard also, right? A sandwich of English managers right there.
Right, it's good to see. And I mean, look, JJ and I can both say, Solihull talent, it's top tier. It is, you are getting the best of the best when you appoint from Solihull, as CBS will agree.
Preach, brother, preach.
I mean, it's just for our viewers, they should both know we do actually share the same hometown as Graham Potter. So I'm very keen for him to get further opportunities. I think we are moving very quickly towards Potter being appointed. We shall see if there's any kinks on the road. Remember, the one thing I would say is he did turn down the Tottenham job effectively, or took himself out of the running when Jose Mourinho left. He kind of reached the conclusion that it was a bit of a poison chalice. And I think it would be only understandable if he had similar doubts about Chelsea. We shall see. It is a very, very big job and a huge opportunity for him to take the step up. But we should remember that he is a smart man. And if he thinks it's not right, he knows he's got a great environment at Brighton.
Absolutely. And, I think as well, it's kind of wishful thinking for Villa fans to think that Potter, in the position he's in with Brighton, would realistically sort of take a sideways step. I know he's got the sentimental link, but while he's in
maybe
the
when he gets sacked by Chelsea.
Possibly. Let's not throw it too.
Honest, JJ, at this point, it's not a sideways step. It's more like dropping down a few notches.
Yeah, I mean, I was being polite to our Villa followers. I mean, the funniest thing was the first chat groups that started pinging when this news broke this morning wasn't like just general sort of European football fans. It was two specific Villa chats I'm in saying, well, there goes our chances of landing Poch. And then suddenly the Potter news is coming and they're saying like, well, there still might be a chance. I mean, I think, I totally agree with everything James has said about Potter. I don't have too much to add on that. I think obviously the temptation must be quite big for Potter, especially when he's just seen the moves that Chelsea have made and the squad that they've put together. But also at the same time, I don't doubt that it will be a very difficult decision for him to make, whatever the ultimate outcome is, because what he's created at Brighton is something special. You really sort of feel that watching their early season form, the way that their transfer window has come together. It's a place that's brimming with positivity at this moment in time. And for Pochettino as the other candidate to Potter, I mean, we talk about him leaving PSG. It's kind of like going from, out of the frying pan into the fire at Chelsea. Because if you think, he struggled in the environment in Paris, he's going to find Stamford Bridge very, very difficult if, he doesn't land on his feet and get results immediately. And, the results that we saw in Paris just weren't good enough. It feels more like almost Pochettino perhaps would be better off perhaps filling the vacancy left by Potter if Potter does take the Chelsea job, given what's happened.
That's a very good point, actually.
I like that.
Some of Pochettino's best football came at Espanyol and Southampton, and Brighton is not, that dissimilar of a project, of course. Before we finish off, because obviously it's just a short one, Graham Potter, per James Benge, and of course added multiple sources from Fabrizio Romano, etc., remains the favorite. We'll see what happens there. A director of football is a key thing for Chelsea as well, a vision right here and a project. But let's finish off with very quickly, JJ, Dominic Tedesco. He's done. Surprised?
No, not surprised at all. In fact, the only thing that I was, surprised about was the fact that, both Tedesco and Tuchel have beaten Lopetegui, because I really thought Lopetegui was going to be the first manager to get the chop, especially after that result against City. It sounds like Sevilla are considering it, so who knows? Maybe I'll have a full house. I tweeted last night that I thought...
Well, let's play a game, JJ. Let's play a game with Benge. Let's play a game with Benge. Who's next, all right? Who's next? We got Lopetegui, Inzaghi, Allegri. Who's next?
It's got to be Lopetegui.
Yeah,
I agree with JJ. It's got to be Lopetegui. Although I thought Juventus were pretty dreadful last night, so I'm keeping an eye on Allegri, and I'm also thinking whichever of Inter or Juve jump first, surely they will have a big look at Thomas Tuchel.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is a good shout. The other one, especially given that he has family that hails from Turin, I suggested Poch to Juve last night, which I don't think would be too bad a fit either.
And that was an earlier narrative a while ago, even before Allegri, and it would suit them. Although,
sorry, I know we're running over time here, but while we're talking about this carousel, I have a little feeling though that Poch is inching towards Alan Kirbishley status, where forever linked. Obviously, a high grade Alan Kirbishley, the sort of Alan Kirbishley you get at Waitrose, not Alan Kirbishley you get at Sainsbury's. Whole Foods, Alan Kirbishley. Works for our American audience.
In the South American
division. I mean, even like go back to a team like Arsenal, they were looking, it's been 3, and obviously I know he has had that PSG job, but a lot of teams look at him long and hard, think about bringing him out of PSG or bring him over. And then there just always seems to be that one other person. So I'm keeping an eye on
my worry about Pochettino, it's not so much even Pochettino, it's about what others are thinking of Pochettino recently. Is they're thinking too much of his PSG days, his Tottenham days. He is at his absolute best when he enters a club that's a sort of a mid-table, young prospects, hungry, and just want to learn an identity. And that's your Espanols, your early Southamptons right there, just after avoiding relegation. Like, those are the clubs that really should be looking at him. I don't want him to go to a big club. I want him to, go to a championship club and just come back up. I think you
don't want him at a big club. That's why you'd be happy with him at Villa Park.
Well, I'm waiting for Graham Potter. All right, everybody. That's the end of our show. Before we say goodbye, don't forget to read both these lovely gentlemen's content on CBS Sports at James Benge, at John_LeGossip, also on CBS Sports HQ. It's another day of Champions League coverage as well. Don't forget. So make sure that you tune in to Paramount Plus, CBS Sports HQ. Final thoughts before we say goodbye. James Benge, final thoughts, buddy.
Yeah, just one more on Poch. I don't think he should take Brighton, because I think Potter's done such a good job. It would be something to really spoil your legacy when you then come like 12th with a good but not amazing cast of players.
That is true. Yeah, that is true. Jonathan Johnson, final thoughts, buddy.
Well, one final thought, and I'll stay with the Poch trend. Whoever he chooses next, or whoever chooses him, he's going to have to think very carefully, because to James's point about him becoming like a new Alan Kirbishley, I think he probably only realistically has one more shot at sort of a semi-major European job before people start to really ask questions, given the way that the PSG spell ended.
Yeah, wait for Sevilla, I say. Maybe just go to La Liga and see what happens. But there you have it, everybody. Thomas Tuchel is out, and Graham Potter is in the lead to take over the Chelsea job. We will see what happens, because this Chelsea Football Club is right now without a manager, and it seems by the weekend without anybody on the bench. But we'll have to wait and see. James Benge, Jonathan Johnson, LME, thanks you so much for listening. Take a minute, by the way, to leave us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. We're on Apple Pod, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere you listen to podcasts. We're also available as video, as you know from this one right here. Subscribe on YouTube. Visit YouTube. Thank you so much. James Benge, JJ, LME. We'll see you next time. Champions League recap later today. Bye-bye. Till then.